Right now, this is our time in the studio with Carolina Coral. I welcome the viewers of Freedom. Let's get straight to the important news. One person was killed and another injured as a result of a Russian drone attack on the Novhorod-Siversky district in the Chernihiv region. This was reported by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The drone strike hit a store. A fire broke out there. Specialized services are working at the scene. The Russian army shelled Kharkiv once again. On the morning of October 13th, a UAV flew into the window of one of the dormitories in the city center. As a result of the impact, about 50 windows were shattered, 2 cars were damaged, but no people were injured. Among the residents of this dormitory were also displaced people from Kupiansk and the Kupiansk district. Ukrainian defense forces eliminated 1,140 Russian servicemen in just the past day. And according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale aggression have exceeded 1,123,000 soldiers. In addition, over the past day, 3 Russian tanks, 21 artillery systems, 2 multiple rocket launch systems, and 110 units of enemy automotive and special equipment were destroyed. 149 combat engagements were recorded along the entire front line in the past day, Ukraine's General Staff reported. The Russian army actively used aviation and drones, conducted 91 airstrikes, dropped 215 guided bombs, and conducted nearly 5,500 shellings on Ukrainian armed forces positions and populated areas. The most intense situation remains in the Pokrovsk direction. Russian occupiers made 46 attempts to break through there. Active assaults were also recorded in the Alexandrovsk, Konstantinovsk, Yuzhno-Salovozhansk, and Lyman directions. Drones from the Security Service of Ukraine and Special Operations Forces struck the Feodosia marine oil terminal again. At least 5 storage tanks were hit. This was reported by Freedom sources in the Security Service of Ukraine. As a result of the attack, fire broke out at the oil depot. A substation in Feodosia was hit. Transformers, the control room, and protective automation systems were damaged. Explosions occurred at the Simferopol substation. In addition, a strike was carried out on Gvardiskoy, from where the Russian army launches Shahids at Ukraine. It is known that there are warehouses with Russian drones located there.
Indeed, it was loud in Crimea today, and today the Feodosia landscapes are decorating almost the entire eastern part of Crimea. They say the flames can be seen from 30, and in some places even 50 kilometers away. Everything is burning out, as they say. The base needs to be shut down. This is a recommendation for the occupying Crimean authorities, who have also confirmed there will be no gasoline.
The number of military personnel who require rehabilitation during the fighting in Ukraine is estimated at almost 250,000 patients annually. In Kharkiv, both state and public organizations are involved in the rehabilitation of soldiers, offering comprehensive physical and, of course, psychological assistance. Adaptive sports, creativity, and music are available for veterans of the Russian-Ukrainian War and active military personnel. More details about the rehabilitation of Ukraine's defenders through sports and music in the report by Natalia Belakudry.
37-year-old Alexander, a serviceman of the National Guard of Ukraine, is preparing to compete in the Open Championship of the 5th Slobozhanska Brigade Skiff in CrossFit. During a combat mission near Crimea in 2023, he stepped on a mine and lost his leg, but he didn't stay in the hospital for long. He decided that he would recover through physical exercise.
After his injury, he recovered in just 4 months and returned to his brigade. Then he became a squad leader, then a platoon commander, and eventually became a physical training and sports instructor in his battalion. In the hospital, while going through rehabilitation, it wasn't like, that's it, everything's over. On the contrary, I tried hard and did exercises.
Almost 2 years after his serious injury, Alexander is actively playing AMP football, taking part in various competitions and tournaments.
Sports are the best way to rehabilitate. You're always with guys who have the same injuries as you. We get together all the time.
Roman is a rifleman grenadier in the 410th Separate Rifle Battalion. He was mobilized in 2023. He defended Kupiansk. 6 months ago, health problems began. He is currently undergoing treatment at the Kharkiv military hospital.
Why am I here? My heart, my health acting up. Looks like they're discharged me.
The servicemen who are currently in the hospital have joined a unique project called Vibrations of Recovery, Orchestra 4.
Rehabilitation.
We are now starting a series of special art therapy events in the city of Kharkiv for the rehabilitation of wounded servicemen who are undergoing treatment. This is our first such initiative. We involved both professional musicians from Kharkiv and professional psychologists, both civilian and military.
For half an hour, 11 pieces are performed in the hall by both Ukrainian and foreign composers. All the melodies were selected taking into account the international experience of music therapists. The emotions of the concert audience are recorded in a special online app.
There are smileys, emojis. That's the easiest way. We see the world through images, and there are emojis that reflect different states, with the emotions also written out in words. So, for example, excited, and the person clicks excited. Or embarrassed, or happy, or sad.
Psychologist Ksemia Yemet says that after the music session, everyone who wants to can join a support group to discuss what they've heard.
The goal, first of all, is to ease people's state, because it's known that if there's catharsis, if there are tears, which can happen while listening to music, it's about releasing cortisol. It's about community when we invite people in. It's about attention. Well, for example, I'm a civilian, but this is my way of showing the military that civilians do care, that we can be there for them, that we can be helpful and are ready to do so.
About 20 soldiers attended the first therapeutic concert of restorative vibrations at the hospital. In total, the organizers plan to hold 5 music sessions here over the course of a month and attract a larger audience. Natalia Belakudri and Andrei Domovoy from Kharkiv, reporting for Freedom TV channel.
In Ukraine, children in the occupied territories are being forcibly treated with psychotropic drugs. This was stated by advisor and also the president of Ukraine's Commissioner for Children's Rights and Child Rehabilitation, Daria Herasimchuk. In this way, they are punished for any display of national identity. Herasimchuk noted that the occupation authorities systematically violate the rights of minors, use physical violence against them, and send them into isolation. Children are forbidden to speak Ukrainian or study according to the Ukrainian curriculum, and if they disobey, not only they but also their parents are punished. Russia prosecutes residents of the occupied territories for alleged treason and espionage. In 3 years of Russian occupation of parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, at least 190 sentences have been handed down against local residents. These figures are reported in Russian media, which also add that from July to September this year, occupation courts handed down sentences under these articles every 3 days. The average prison term is 13.5 years. A third of those sentenced are women, and at least 8 of those convicted are still teenagers. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 774 residents of occupied territories have been sentenced. The war in Gaza is over, as announced by U.S. President Donald Trump in the Israeli parliament. The agreement provides for the disarmament of Hamas. Let me remind you, the head of the White House arrived in Israel for a summit of leaders from more than 20 countries, dedicated to peace in the Gaza Strip and the Middle East. Negotiations between Hamas terrorists and Israel began on October 6th in Sharm el-Sheikh. Israel and Hamas have approved the general principles of the Trump plan, according to which hostilities will cease, hostages must be released, and humanitarian aid will begin to flow into Gaza.
This is not just the end of the war. This is the end of an era of terror and death. The beginning of an era of faith, hope, and God. This is the beginning of great accord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the peoples of what will soon become a truly magnificent region. I firmly believe in this. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East. Future generations will remember this as the moment when everything began to change for the better. This will be the golden age of Israel and the Middle East.
And today, in accordance with the first phase of the Trump plan for a ceasefire, Hamas has released 20 Israeli hostages. These are the last of the captives who remained in Palestinian hands since October 7th, 2023. Hamas will also return the bodies of 28 Israelis who died in captivity. Under this agreement, Israel has already withdrawn its troops from the Gaza Strip and has also released a number of Hamas terrorists who were held in Israeli prisons. Israel highly valued the role of the American president in the peaceful resolution of the Middle East conflict during Trump's visit, and the country's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, gave him a golden dove of peace as a gift. And on the cover of the Jerusalem Post, they featured a photo of the American president with the headline, "God bless the peacemaker." Also, during Trump's speech in the Knesset, the Speaker of the Israeli Parliament, Amir Ohana, announced that next year he would nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. According to him, no one deserves it more than the current president of the United States. Meanwhile, Putin is ready to keep testing Europe and could provoke a heated confrontation at any moment. This was stated by the president of Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, Martin Jaeger. He told members of parliament in Berlin that Moscow's actions are aimed at undermining NATO unity, destabilizing European democracies, dividing society, and intimidating the population. Jaeger noted that the hybrid methods Russia uses for this are now being observed everywhere, and the frequency of individual incidents reflects a new level of confrontation. The head of foreign intelligence added that restraint and softness are interpreted by Russia as weakness. Therefore, Germany needs to draw the right conclusions from this. The G7 countries want to maximize pressure on Russian oil exports. The plan proposes increasing production in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and reducing purchases of Russian oil by India and Turkey, according to Reuters. This would be a serious blow to the Kremlin's weakening economy and could even force Putin to stop the war against Ukraine, the publication says. To achieve this, it is necessary for other countries, especially the Gulf states, to ramp up oil production, and it will also be important to convince major buyers of Russian oil, such as India, to purchase less Russian oil and more Saudi and Emirati oil. China has responded to the U.S. over the tariff increase. This statement came in response to Donald Trump's threat to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods starting in November. Beijing stated that the U.S. should stop making threats and called for further negotiations on unresolved issues regarding the trade agreement.
The United States of America will impose a 100% tariff on Chinese goods on top of the existing duties. This was announced by U.S. President Donald Trump on the social network Truth Social. This happened after China introduced new port fees for American ships and announced sweeping restrictions on the export of rare earth elements and other critical materials. In addition, they have launched an antitrust investigation against QCOM Incorporated. The Chinese regulator is examining whether the American chip manufacturer violated competition rules in the country. Donald Trump sharply condemned Beijing's intention to impose export restrictions on almost all products made in China, calling China's actions, and I quote, of moral disgrace.
China has taken an extremely aggressive stance on trade issues, sending a highly hostile letter to the entire world, in which it announced that starting November 1, 2025, it will implement sweeping export controls on almost all goods it produces. This applies to all countries without exception and is clearly a plan that was developed several years ago. It's hard to believe that China could take such measures, but it has done so. Donald Trump, President of the United States, on the social network Truth Social.
China controls about 90% of the world's mining and processing of rare earth metals, which are critically important for a wide range of products. From electric vehicles and aircraft engines to military radars. This is not the first time China has imposed export controls. Before this, the country tightened regulations after tariffs on Chinese goods were raised in January 2025.
All of this is a direct reflection of the ongoing trade war and technological competition that exists or is intensifying between the United States and China.
In China, they responded to Donald Trump's latest measures against Beijing and stated that the U.S. should stop threatening with tariffs. They called for further negotiations on unresolved issues to reach a trade.
This signifies a mutual understanding and a shared consensus between all parties involved, indicating a complete and harmonious agreement.
Also, U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening China with restrictions on the export of Boeing spare parts. He stated that the U.S. may impose export controls on the supply of parts and components for aircraft if Beijing extends restrictions on the export of rare earth metals, which are critically important for American industry.
China has a monopoly on the production of most of these rare earth metals, and there are more than a dozen of them. And China can significantly influence the technological landscape. Production in those countries that specialize in modern electronics, which use these rare earth metals to create microchips and some other electronic components. This control allows China to use rare earth metals and their trade as a lever of pressure, or you could say, as a means of defense against the United States.
The escalation of the trade standoff between the United States and China on Friday triggered a sharp reaction in the financial markets. Oil and cryptocurrencies plummeted in value, and the shares of the world's largest companies fell by more than 2% after the markets closed. Recall that in April 2025, Donald Trump imposed high tariffs on Chinese goods, raising them to 54%. China responded with countermeasures, increasing its own tariffs. In the following weeks, Washington and Beijing took turns raising tariffs, reaching 145% for Chinese goods in the U.S. and 120% for American goods in China. In May, a 90-day trade truce was announced. The parties agreed on mutual tariff terms, and Trump declared that the document had been signed. On September 15th, Trump announced a major trade meeting in Europe between the United States of America and China. However, on October 10th, Donald Trump claimed that China had taken a supposedly hostile action and cancelled.
The upcoming meeting is a crucial gathering where we will discuss important topics. We will review recent progress and plan for future initiatives. Your attendance and input are highly valued for a productive discussion. Kaja Kallas announced this during her visit to Kyiv today, October 13th. This is already Kallas's third trip to the Ukrainian capital in her role as the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Immediately after arriving in Kyiv, the head of European diplomacy held talks with Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha. And on the agenda are the situation at the front and increasing sanctions pressure on the aggressor, joint security structures, and strikes on Ukraine's energy system.
Russia is trying to take revenge by attacking civilian infrastructure and energy facilities. The European Union has pooled 800 million euros to support Ukraine this winter. We are also working on an additional 100 million for backup generators. We now have 2 billion for drones. There is also a civilian mission for cyber defense. The war continues, so we must take every measure to support Ukraine. EU countries are discussing a reparations tranche from the frozen assets of the Russian Federation. Moscow should pay for this war, not European taxpayers. I can announce today the first 10 million euros. This amount is for organizing a special tribunal on aggression against Ukraine.
Our security is inseparable from the security of the European Union. The European Union needs our combat experience to counter challenges like drone attacks. These are hybrid attacks, speaking about the EU in general. And Europe may think that it is not at war with Russia, but Russia is already waging an undeclared hybrid war against Europeans. And we need to be ready for this. Ukraine is rapidly developing the necessary technologies to counter the invasion of Russian drones. Currently, an average of 500 to 700 drones are used during attacks on energy infrastructure or other targets.
Arriving in Ukrainian capital, Kolos noted courage of Ukrainian people, inspiring world.
Ukrainians inspire the world with their bravery. Their resilience demands our full support. Today I am in Kyiv to hold talks on financial and military support, the security of Ukraine's energy sector, and holding Russia accountable for war crimes. Taya Kallas is the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, according to a post on social media platform X.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.